Leone Hebreo di Sommi was in charge of the theatrical productions at the court of Mantua. The Biblioteca Palatina of Parma has a unique manuscript copy of the Sommi dialogi, a treatise on playwriting and stagecraft. One courtier, Massignano, visited the workshop of Peridico di Sommi, who, in the course of 4 dialogues, develops his ideas about dramaturgy and staging, dealing with sub-subjects as acting, costuming, lighting, and the mounting of pastorals.
I shall say only, generally speaking, that the actor must always be nimble of body and his limbs must not be inflexible and stiff. He must keep his feet still in a fitting manner while he is speaking and move them with grace when it is necessary. He must keep his head in a certain natural way so that it will not appear that it is attached to his neck with nails. And he must let his arms and his hands go when nature directs them. And he must not do as so many do who, wishing to gesticulate too much, do not seem to know what to do with them. For example, if a woman in a certain scene has put her hand on her side, or if a young man has placed his hand on his soul, neither the one nor the other must remain forever in that position. But when he has ended the speech which requires such a position, he must abandon that position and find another one more suitable to the speech which follows. And when he does not find another fitting gesture, or when he does not need to assume a posture, he should, as I have said, let his arms and his hands go when nature directs them. Loose and relaxed. Loose and relaxed. And not hold them raised or inflexible, as if they were attached with sticks to the body. But he must always maintain in his action greater or lesser dignity, as the situation requires of the person being represented, and likewise with the sound of words. Now, arrogant! Now, placid! Now spoken with timidity. And now with daring! Making poses! Making poses! Making poses in their proper place, always imitating and observing the naturalness of the qualities of those persons being represented. And above all, he must avoid like a course a certain manner of acting which, for lack of a better term, I shall call pedantic.
Pedantic.
Similar to the recitation of school children before the teacher. He must, I repeat, avoid that mode of delivery which seems a sing-song learned by heart. And he must, above all, make an effort to bring it about that what he says be spoken with effectiveness and seem to be nothing more than a familiar discourse which comes about spontaneously. I tell you especially that I make efforts to dress the actors always in as novel a fashion as is possible for me, but in such a manner that there is always a sense of proportion among them, in view of the fact that the rich costume, particularly in these times when pomp is at its highest peak, adds much reputation and beauty to comedies and even more to tragedies. I would not hesitate to dress a servant in velvet or colored satin, as long as his master's costume were embroidered or decorated with gold. so rich that there will be maintained the proper proportion between them. But I would not clothe a housemaid with a torn old skirt, or a servant with a torn doublet. On the contrary, I would have her wear a nice skirt and him a showy jacket, and I would add so much nobility to the clothes of their masters as to allow for the beauty of the servants' costumes.
There is no doubt that the sight of the rags which others put on a master's back or on a servant detracts much from the dignity of a play.
One can very well clothe a miser or even a peasant with costumes which have a certain degree of richness about them without being unnatural.
It is certainly so. Particularly because, as you say, we must follow the ways of our times.
I do my utmost to dress the actors very differently from one another, and this is of great help, both in adding beauty and in facilitating the understanding of the plot. And for this reason, I believe the ancients had appropriate costumes and assigned colors for each type of actor. If I had, for example, to clothe 3 or 4 servants, I would dress one in white with a hat, another in red with a small cap on his head, another with a livery of various colors, and another I would adorn perhaps with a velvet cap and a pair of knitted sleeves if his position allows it. Thus, if I had to clothe 2 lovers, I would try, both in their styles and in their colors, to make them very different. One with a cape, the other with a stately garment. One with plumes on his head, the other with gold, but no feathers. In order that as soon as one sees not necessarily the face but the hem of the one's costumes or the others must remain in this position forever.
How many times I've been long in doubt in recognizing an actor on stage because he was not different enough from another actor or servant.
The variety of colors is very helpful in this connection. The costume should be of definite colors, light colors. Black or any dark color should be used as little as possible. Not only do I try to vary the actors' costumes, but I strive as much as I can to transform each one from its usual appearance. I do not, however, want to make the mistake the ancients made, who, in order that their actors should not be recognized, painted their faces with wine sediment or with mud. I find it enough to disguise them, but inasmuch as the audience like novel things especially, a performance is very enjoyable when one sees on the stage costumes that are ancient and remote from our fashions. And for this reason, it comes about that comedies in Greek costumes are so appealing. What's wrong with... I want you to tell me one thing, Veridico. Here on your stage are many electric lamps giving ample illumination and making a most lovely show. What then is the use of, and how originated those many lamps burning on the roofs of the stage houses? They do not seem to me to aid the perspective, and for ordinary purposes there are torches enough.
I think I have said more than once that plays are produced for the purpose of providing pleasant instruction and of alleviating annoyance of mind. Whence I declared, and again I repeat it, the actor should above all other things endeavor to enunciate his lines in a bright and joyous manner. Such, granted, that the author provides us with a pleasant, charming plot, and that the actor gives to this a vivid interpretation. Surely, it is equally essential that the architect should represent gladness and joy on the stage. Now it has been a custom, both in ancient and modern times, to light bonfires and torches in the streets, on the housetops, and on towers as a sign of joy. And hence arises this theatrical convention, the imitating of such festive occasions. The lights are put there for no other purpose but to imitate in the very first scene this mood of gaiety.
I suppose then that these lights will not appear in a tragedy.
Perhaps they could not be so wholly out of place, even in such a play. Quite apart from the fact that there are tragedies with happy endings, we know that nearly all tragedies open in a happy strain. And consequently, it could not be unfitting to arouse the mind so far as we may to this happiness, although disasters and deaths are to ensue later. I remember once I had to produce a tragedy of this kind. During all the time when the episodes were happy in mood, I had the stage brightly illuminated.
Oh!
But so soon as the first unhappy incident occurred, the unexpected death of a queen, while the chorus was engaged in lamenting that the sun could bear to look down on such evil, I contrived, by prearrangement of course, that at that very instant, most of the stage lights not used for the perspective were darkened or extinguished.
Oh.
This created a profound impression of horror among spectators, and won universal praise.
I could not have called for anything but praise! Would you please now tell me why most of your lights have in front of them transparent or colored glasses?
This was invented by some men who realized a little appreciated fact, that the brilliant light striking directly upon the eye for any length of time becomes exceedingly irritating. Oh, for God's sake, excuse me. Since then, the spectator must keep his eyes fixed on the stage, watching the actions proceeding now on this side, now on that. The shading of the lights was devised to minimize the annoyance.
I should be willing to bet that not 10 persons out of 100 who make use of these shades appreciate their object.
They could, at any rate, say that these shades were used to produce a more beautiful effect, and in so doing, they could be recognizing part of the whole. Not by my own theorizing, certainly, but for long practice and experience, I have made observation of these things and have tried to get at their origins. I have found that it was the ancients who, as the saying goes, snatched them from obscurity. While we're dealing with this subject, I should like to point out also that the small mirrors which some managers set at appropriate places in the perspective settings and the far sides of the winds are very effective. They reflect those concealed lights which some architects cleverly place behind columns and in the openings between the winds, thus serving to make the set more gay and bright. Not only can these reflections give no annoyance to the eyes, they have the further advantage that here we obtain light without smoke, a great consideration. I may take this occasion to remark that the producer who does not take care to have a number of holes made behind the scenes so that the smoke from the lamps may have a means of escape will land himself in serious difficulties, for otherwise this smoke, gradually increasing and becoming thicker, will produce so effective a screen that before the second that be done, the actors will seem to be not men, but shadows, while the spectators, as if blinded, without realizing the cause, will get the impression that they're losing their sight. Great care ought to be taken of this, although it is a matter to which few pay sufficient attention. So far as my experience goes, there is no real difficulty provided adequate pains are taken beforehand.
Now that you bring these things to my attention, I do recall that at the close-up plays we have often found our eyes smarting uncomfortably at that we realize this must have been due to the cause you have referred to.
To avoid the smoke screen, I have found that the best remedy is to open as many windows as possible behind the proscenium, so that the air entering from below drives all the smoke through the holes, both in the roof, behind the scenery.
That, I believe, would be an excellent device.
It is, I assure you.
I see, Veridico, that on your stage there are many lamps, both behind the scenes and in front of them. Yet here in the auditorium you have made arrangements for but 12 standing candelabra. The reason, I can't imagine. For I often counted as many as 250 torches in this large hall.
It is a natural fact, as no doubt you are aware, that a man who stands in the shade sees much more distantly an object illuminated from afar. The reason being that the sight proceeds more directly upon this object. Or, according to the peripatetic theory, the object impinges itself more directly upon the eye. Wherefore, I place only a few lamps in the auditorium, while at the same time, I render the stage as bright as I possibly can. Still farther, these few auditorium lights I place at the rear of the spectators, because the interposition of such lights will but be dazzling to the eyes. Over them, as you see, I have made small openings so that their smoke can cause no damage.
By thus introducing only a few lights in the auditorium, then, you obviate the trouble of smoke films. And there is yet another advantage. You save the Duke 50 ducats in respect of the torches usually set in the hall.
That, I confess, had not come to my mind. Nor that His Excellency need to think of such economies. But, as the proverb says, in the end every good proves good.
Concerning the illumination of the scene you have set, in my opinion, all that can be said.